What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish the Moment. Today I'm going to be sharing a pre-recorded live stream from Beaver Lake in Arkansas. Due to spotty cell reception around the lake, I wasn't able to live stream this video, but I did record everything I was doing on the lake, showing my side imaging, down imaging, 2D sonar, and Livescope views as I find fish on Beaver Lake. We're fishing in the middle of July, and water temperatures are in the mid-80s. The fishing has actually been very tough on Beaver recently, with 13 pounds winning the most recent local tournament. 11 pounds will get you in the top 10. That means if I 2-pound bass, I'm going to be doing very well. There are a lot of smaller bass on Beaver Lake, so this video will be a great lesson on how to target better than average quality bass. On Beaver, that's about a 2 1/4 to 2.5 pounder, that's above average. And really, if I can catch one fish that's 2 to 2.5 pounds every hour and a half on Beaver this time of year, I'm super happy. Let's get out to the lake and show you how I broke down Beaver Lake in these tough conditions.
Morning, y'all. Welcome back to our Fish the Moment long form video. Today we're out on Beaver Lake in Arkansas, and I'm going to be showing you how I find offshore bass with my down imaging, side imaging, 2D sonar, and also hopefully show you how I catch some fish using Livescope. I actually want to run a little bit of an experiment today with my distance that I'm getting to these fish, trying to stay a little bit further away because I look back at some data that I'll get into that may kind of indicate I need to be staying further away from these fish, but we'll get into that in a bit. Before we get into that though, I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsors of this Fish the Moment long form content. First up, Bridgeford Foods. Bridgeford Foods is a longtime sponsor of the Fish the Moment long form content, and they are one of the best brands out there that support bass fishing. If you guys love bass fishing, love this sport, support the brands that support bass fishing. Bridgeford is definitely one of them. You can find Bridgeford beef jerky, my favorite go-to on the lake snack, at your local gas stations, dollar stores, Walmart, checkout aisles, stuff like that. Definitely get some of the sweet teriyaki Bridgeford beef jerky. Super soft, super tender, really good stuff, especially when you're out here fishing all day. Also want to give a huge shout out to Integrated Boat Works over in Tulsa. My friend Darren started up a new boat shop. He is one of the best in the industry at installing fish finders, and he also knows what he's talking about in terms of electronics installation, fish finder, tech, all that kind of stuff. Really help us out if you guys can go over to the Integrated Boat Works website and check out some of the products there. He's just trying to get his website sales started up. I actually don't get paid to talk about Integrated Boat Works. I'm just doing it to help out Darren, who's my friend. So it's one of those things that I like to do at times, just help out friends, and it's a great way to support small businesses out there. So instead of going to a big box store or whatever to get your electronics and to get them installed, head over to Integrated Boat Works in Tulsa and go see my friend Darren. And also, if you have questions, a lot of times he can actually ask me, which is kind of nice, and I can get on the phone and get any help you guys might need in terms of what you might want. But other than that, let's just jump straight into it, guys. Want to get my graphing view pulled up here. We should be rolling. Oh, it's not what I wanted. There we go. There's my face. Make sure I don't make the same mistake as I made my last video where I didn't have stuff rolling properly. So we will get rolling. Okay, so out here on Beaver Lake, I'll kind of show you where I'm at. I'm basically further up the river in the dirtier water section of the lake. I plan on graphing right here by the boat ramp for a minute, and then we're gonna run up the War Eagle Creek or river. It's kind of my plan, and we're getting kind of right on top of something that I want to graph, so we're just gonna jump straight into it and get over here. Let me double check this, make sure that we're good. Oh, I need to set up my settings real quick. Oh, shoot. Okay, guys, this is important. When I get to the lake, I actually have my, my sonar settings. I need to make a guide for these, but basically, there's already fish down here. Maybe those aren't fish though. I have my sonar settings here, and the nice thing about this Garmin unit is that I can get these Fish the Moment settings saved, and it's basically what I use when I get to the lake. So I'm gonna change all of these over to I have a couple test settings I'm using too, but I wanna make sure I get all of my settings set up properly, and I'll create a sonar settings guide for this hopefully soon. But man, there's already fish literally right there. Those look, I don't know what those are. Those look halfway decent even right off the bat though. We're out here pretty early in the morning. Make sure you guys can see what I'm looking at. Yeah, we're out here pretty early in the morning, but that's a bunch of fish even right there. Wow, there's a bunch of fish right here already this morning. To be all completely honest with you guys, I fished out here about a month ago, so I did find a few fish. This isn't like fresh, right? Like don't know what's happening at all. I should have at least a general idea of what's happening out here because I fished here about a month ago. Normally I don't revisit the same areas that often, but I didn't really put out the video from that trip yet, and so I thought might as well just, you know, try to do a video out here for you guys. And basically what I'm graphing out here is some nice rock piles. There's basically a ledge right here. There were a bunch of spotted bass here and a school of fish, which actually we're seeing on the 2D sonar. It looks like they're still here, which is kind of crazy. There's a brush pile on the right side of the side scan, bunch of stuff. So let me switch over here. So one, you can see these fish. So we got several fish, not real big ones, but we do have some fish right on that waypoint that I had before. Don't look that big, and it looks like there's a lot of clutter on the screen. So I don't know if I'm like really sold that this is gonna be the end all be all. There's a nice little lay down though, and there's a couple fish right on that. So I might pause this, drop a waypoint right on that stump or stick. It's kind of interesting. I am out here a lot earlier in the morning than I was the last time I fished this. And there's a brush pile back there. I had a lot of it marked. If I kind of go back to the sonar view, a lot happened right off the bat there, sorry guys. But we have a nice drop right here where basically you have a brush pile right there that we'll kind of mark again with a brush pile icon. And then we also had a nice ledge or a nice drop. And there were actually fish further down this drop over here. You can see in the shadow, there's a bunch of fish right here as well. So I'll mark this with a fish icon. And then we're gonna get back to it because we're coming up on another little deal. When you're graphing out here, sometimes you kind of have to be on your toes because you gotta find this stuff kind of somewhat quickly, mark it all, and then also make sure you're not missing anything else that you might be graphing. There's a bunch of fish out here from what it looks like. There's a lot of trash fish, not trash fish, but fish I don't really care about. There's striper, there's walleye, there's crappie on this lake. So I don't get super excited unless I see a school of fish that looks absolutely perfect. I'm gonna regraph this stuff probably just because it's kind of was a little bit of a cluster already this morning. But what I'm basically seeing, you can see on my 2D sonar and my combo view here that there are a bunch of fish just spread out across this drop and higher up in the water column, which is pretty typical in the mornings. You can see all these dots on down imaging. You can see a couple of arches on 2D, but nothing crazy. Ooh, get a sneeze out of the way in the morning. Very beautiful behind me, by the way, that Arkansas sky. Gotta love it. But basically, I'm just graphing some of these ledges out here. Saw a bunch of fish. Didn't catch any real big ones. I think actually right around this area, I lost like a 4.5 pounder last time I was here, which is a really good one for beaver, so I take that back. There are good fish in this area. But basically, what I'm hoping to do is find schools of fish here in the morning so I can get on the board fast. And then if I need to, I can slow down in the afternoon and, you know, pick it apart with a jig, do a little bit slower fishing. I can't really see the water visibility because it's so early in the morning, but I expect that we probably have about 3 to 4 feet of visibility, maybe 2.5 to 4 feet of visibility in this area of the lake. So not super clear relative to what beaver normally is, but not too bad. There are some fish right there on that drop that look like there's a few scattered. There's a nice brush pile that you can actually see on the side scan. That's actually interesting. You can't, if you look at this, you can see it too on the 2D sonar. There's a nice brush pile right there and a nice brush pile on side scan. So we're gonna pause and mark that brush just to have that marked. Maybe for later. I don't really see anything with the clear view. I don't really see a bunch of like big fish around it or anything, especially if we switch over to the 2D. You don't really see anything. The brush basically just disappears and you don't really see any fish around it. So with my settings, I basically filter out all the small fish. So we're probably not dealing with a massive group. I do like this ledge right here though. Out to the left, you can see there's a bunch of activity on the side scan, just at the very bottom there. There are a bunch of fish that seem to be kind of just up and roaming on this ledge early in the morning, right up on top. You can see them on the 2D and the down imaging. There's a bunch of fish in there. Not all bass, I'm assuming. I'm assuming some of those are also other species. I would like for the fish to be grouped up a little bit tighter, to be honest, based on how I normally like to catch them out here. When these fish are roaming and scattered with this dirtier water, it's a little bit harder to get them to bite. You kind of want them to be schooled up, but we're also here a lot earlier in the morning, and that means these fish are not going to be holding, tight to cover, tight to structure, stuff like that. They are going to be more in that roaming mood. So we're going to have to kind of adjust our strategy for that. We do have some nice fish that popped right there on that little rock. And then right here is where I graphed a school last time I was here, and there are some fish. We kind of got a weird view going on, but there are some fish on the top of that rock there and kind of in this general area. So it looks relatively promising. I don't want to say I'm like sold that the fish are here or that we're going to get bit here. The main reason I'm not super sold on this spot in particular is just the fact that I think these fish are roaming a little bit too much, but I think that's going to be a problem anywhere we go right now, to be honest, just until that sun gets up a little bit higher. So I'm going to just drop the trolling motor, fish down this little drop for a minute, maybe throw crankbait or something around. And my goal really, more than anything, is to just get a feel for what the fish are doing and also explain my experiment I'm running today. I would give myself maybe about a 20% chance of actually catching anything right here. So I'm not saying this is going to be a great spot, but at least it'll allow us to get a sense for what the fish are doing, the mood of the fish, and that's really important when you first get out to the lake. So let me switch this camera around and we'll get rolling. There we go, guys, and wow, that sky up there is just absolutely gorgeous. Gotta love these Arkansas summer mornings. Any time of the year in Arkansas here is very pretty, so we're good to go. Interesting here, so you can see on my Livescope, if I turn the gain up, there's a very hard thermocline set in right at 18 feet. You can see it gets really fuzzy right at 18 feet. And so basically what that tells me is that we're gonna be dealing with probably some fish that are setting up at least 18 feet or shallower. Whenever you have a thermocline setting in, basically what that means is that's where the oxygen contents in the water kind of changes. And so those fish are gonna want to set up near the thermocline or above it. So we're gonna be fishing 18 feet or shallower today. And really what I wanna do is, one, I wanna actually take my range and I wanna extend it out a lot further. I've recently been using a 100-foot range, and I'm trying to stay about 100 feet away from these fish. But I've done some data, so you guys know I like to do. And what I've found is that I've been getting a lot of my quality bites. Let me double check this camera real quick. There we go. Quality bites when let me double check that actually again. What the heck? Sorry guys, I want to make sure I'm actually, there we go, we're actually recording. Because like last time I didn't have it recording and I messed up. So what I want to do is I want to try to stay at least 100 feet away from these fish. And I have this new Livescope Plus transducer that Darren at Integrated Boatworks installed for me. And you can see a lot further. And I've been basically finding from my recent research into my videos this year that 90% of the fish I've caught that have been over 4 pounds have been caught more than 100 feet away from the boat. Basically, when I make a bomb cast out there, I'm not seeing a lot of fish that these quality fish I'm catching on Livescope. It's kind of weird because you would think, obviously Livescope should help you catch bigger fish and more fish because you can see them bite the bait and all that stuff. But I've actually found it to be the opposite for me. Every time I've actually caught or I've seen fish bite on Livescope, they've been 3 pounds or less. And all of my better quality fish have actually come when I don't see them on the Livescope and I'm making long bomb casts out there, staying away from the fish a lot more. And I think these bigger fish are just getting kind of accustomed to the Livescope. Now, I don't know if it is an actual Livescope thing or if it's a distance, your boat distance thing. So today I'm gonna run an experiment here on Beaver where I keep the Livescope on and I set the range to 150 feet here. And then the next test, actually I need to go in here to my menu 1 second here, guys. I'm gonna set my range ring a little bit longer too. Let's see here. How do I even do that? That's a great question. Overlays? No. Sorry guys, I need to check my chart. I'm trying to figure out this chart settings thing. My vessel maybe? There we go. This is it. Okay. I'm just messing with my settings here, guys. Apologies. I want to set my range ring on my fish finder. You guys can't see me doing this because I'm doing it on my front graph and I'm only recording my back graph. But I'm setting my range ring to 150 feet so I can try to stay further away from these fish. And I'll show you what I got here. Let me actually save this setting and I'll switch over. I'll spot lock. I'll show you what I'm doing here. Let me save this setting. And I should have done this before I got out here, but you know, guys, this is what these uncuts are about. I'm showing you what I'm doing here. So I just created a new setting here, a new preset. It's called 150. So if I go over here and I switch you to this view, I'm going to go to my mapping or charts. And what I'm basically doing, if I go to the graphing view, you're not going to see me fully. But right now I have range rings set on my boat, and you basically can see that the boat over here is right there, and I have this heading arrow, and I have these range rings that go around 100 feet. Well, I just came in here and I created this new preset that's 150 feet. And now that range ring is at 150, and I'm going to try to stay 150 feet away from all these things I'm marking on the graph. And my plan is to try to do it with Livescope right now. But hopefully, if I catch fish doing this, I can just continue to do that. But if not, I'm going to plan to go to Grand Lake on Thursday. And if I don't catch like any real big ones, which I'm not guaranteed to catch a big one out here on Beaver anyways, because it's not the easiest lake to catch big ones on. Make sure I'm recording the right thing. But basically, I'm going to just use mapping only on my next trip to Grand to see if that makes a difference, and basically to see if having the Livescope pointed at these fish in general is the issue versus just my boat distance. So experiment A, if this is all making any sense to you guys. First experiment is try to stay more than 100 feet away from these fish with the Livescope, but still have Livescope on. That's today on Beaver. And then Thursday on Grand, the experiment will be, if I don't use Livescope at all and just use my mapping to line up on fish, can I catch them better? And we're gonna see basically if either of those actually help, or I might find that I don't catch big fish either day and I just need to get better at fishing or something, who knows. But we're gonna try. There's a bunch of fish down there on the Livescope right now. You can see them all down there. They're at 90 feet. Basically just working my bait through them. It's kind of hard to get a sense for how big these fish are and everything now because I've rearranged. Whenever you change up the range settings again on your graph, you kind of have to reevaluate what you're looking at and the size of the fish, the size of the dots, all that stuff, because the bigger the screen range, the smaller the fish are going to appear. So it might take me a couple of minutes to get used to this wider range, but we're gonna try to stay away from these fish. I can't really tell where my bait is super well. I think it might be out there at 90 feet right now. I might actually have to even cast further than what I just did. I haven't tried to track my bait this far out before, so this is a nice experiment. We're gonna see if this even works. I might find that it's even easier to use the, oh, there it is. Yeah, I can see my bait at 80 feet. There's some fish coming up for it. A couple of fish at 80 feet. Just working that core tackle tush. There's a bunch of fish right there. Look at that, guys. I don't know what they all are. I know I caught bass here relatively recently, but I don't think these are all bass, to be honest. I'm gonna try to bomb a crankbait out there just for a cast. I'm just gonna work down this ledge. Again, these fish are there's a lot of fish roaming right now. And basically, whenever these fish are roaming like this in the mornings, they're slightly harder to catch because they're not grouped up and they're not like setting up in your traditional schooled up spots. So you have to fan cast a lot more, kind of cover the area a little bit more thoroughly with just like kind of fan cast versus just picking up one little spot that they're all stacked up on. I'm just gonna fire this crankbait up there on that little deal. I don't know what that is right there. You can see it. It's about 80 feet out. Burn a deep dive around that. Again, I gave myself about a 20% chance to catch a fish here. One thing that's kind of interesting, so I've been running all this data, guys, so I like running data. And what I found is that on average, over the years, I did this like 2 years ago in a video, it takes me about 2 hours and 45 minutes to start catching fish offshore. The last couple of Uncut videos, I have actually caught them faster than that, which is kind of cool. May mean I'm getting better at fishing. It also may mean that I just got lucky. Let me double check that we're recording still, as always, make sure I'm not doing anything crazy. There we go, we should be good. But basically, it took me 2 hours and 45 minutes on average to find fish. Now, when I say, I don't actually not find fish, but catch fish. And a lot of times what happens is that I find fish, no problem. You can find them, but the catching them is the issue. It's not necessarily the finding them that's the issue. And like right here, we have a pile of fish that are right there under the boat. I've almost got too close to them. And sometimes these fish right here, for example, can be bass, and they're just not actively feeding right now. And what I found, which is interesting, is since I've been fishing in the morning, I haven't really been doing as much morning fishing recently, but because of the camera gear and stuff, I'm getting out earlier. I've been doing a lot of afternoon fishing up until this last couple of weeks. And so with the fishing in the morning, I find that these offshore fish don't fire super well right off the bat in the morning. And sometimes in the past, I've found that that does happen where I just pull up right off the bat, start smashing them in the morning. But a lot of times I find that that bite gets better, not like right now at 6 o'clock, but actually gets better around 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And that's when I've been catching the majority of my fish in these videos, is during that time of day. So I don't know if it's just the light is too low for these fish to be able to easily see my bait out there that deep, or I really don't know what it is. But either way, I definitely been getting a bit better later in the day, a little bit later in the morning at least. But there are definitely some fish down there. I think I got too close to them maybe, but I can't get them to trigger, to bite. Those kind of look like bass, to be honest. And it's right on one of those waypoints I had, but I also was not thinking that they looked fantastic, to be honest. They didn't look set up that well. There are some fish down there, but it doesn't look fantastic. There's that log at 70 feet that I marked earlier. Firing out in this general direction. I don't really know where my bait is right now. This range being at 150 feet is a little bit disorienting because I'm used to running it at 100 feet, so it's hard to keep track of where my bait is fully. But there are some fish that are kind of around that little stick up or standing tree. So we'll work our bait around that real quick. Oh, there's my bait. It's at 50 feet. Okay, nothing to see there. So let's keep rolling. I'm gonna keep fishing down this drop just a little bit. There's still some fish that are just kind of out here. So we're gonna fire out here in front of the boat. And my bait, actually, I can see it that time. I think it's, well, no, I say that. Maybe it's not. I thought I saw it like at 100 foot. There are definitely some dots and fish down there in that 100-foot zone. I just don't know what they are. They could be crappie bass, something completely different. Walleye, I've caught walleye out here. I've caught striper. There's all kinds of fish out here. And there's a lot of stuff happening on the screen. It's kind of been the story the last couple of fishing trips recently, is that I've seen a lot of stuff on the screen, and it's been tough to actually get bit because there's just so much activity. It's hard to tell what you're looking at. My bait's down there right now at 40 feet. Whatever I'm bringing that bait through right now, they don't seem very interested in my bait. My bait's now at 30 feet. They don't seem very interested in what I'm offering them, which is not that big of a deal. We're gonna keep rolling up here. We got another little corner that we can hit, and we're just gonna fish this real fast. There's a little brush pile up here that we're gonna be able to see probably throw a jig around that, or actually I might throw a swim bait over the top of that brush. I didn't see any fish in it, but we'll just kind of toss a swim bait in it regardless, just to see if maybe one pulled up since we graphed it. And then we're gonna get rolling actually to the war eagle, because honestly, I think these fish get beat on in this area pretty regularly that I'm in. So I don't really want to be fishing a bunch of pressured fish. They get pressured in the war eagle where we're going to go also, but I feel like they get slightly less pressure maybe, or maybe I'm wrong, I'm not really sure. But we're going to make that run here in a second, but I do want to try to hit this brush pile with this swim bait at 150 feet, if that's possible. So that brush pile is right there. Bomb that 3/4 ounce tush out there with a 6.8 Kitech. That brush pile's out there at 120. Back us up a little bit. Just reel that swim bait nice and easy over the top of that. I'm again trying to stay far away from these fish right now. Not get too close. It's hard to even see the brush or see anything right now. Oh, there's my swim bait. I can see it over the top of the brush pile now. 100 feet, that's cool. So I can see that far out. And either there was nobody home, or they didn't like my swim bait. But I didn't see anything actually come up from my bait or anything get excited about what I was throwing. I'm going to toss a jig across this really quick, just to see if there's some fish that might just be on the bottom. Water temps are pretty warm right now though, 84 degrees, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, so pretty warm water temperatures, to be honest. And we're just going to try a couple things here. There's that brush pile. We're going to try a jig over in it. Looks like there's some crappie and some bait activity. There's a bunch of stuff going on down there. Drag my jig around up there for a second. I'm getting too close to these spots, even though I'm trying to stay far away from them. It's a bad habit already. You can see I'm already 60 feet away from that brush pile, which is crazy because I was literally trying to stay away from it, and it was hard for me to do that. So imagine when your range on the Livescope is set to 100 feet, you're probably going to get on that brush pile up to 40. So yeah, I need to definitely think about my distance to these areas, because I'm already pretty close to this deal. And I don't want to be 50 feet away from this brush pile, to be honest, but that's just kind of what happened. So this is a good learning lesson for me too, that I'm probably getting too close to these spots. I also have the wind blowing at my back, so it's pushing me into the brush pile, which is not really helping situation, but you can see all that bait down there. You can see that brush pile at 50 foot. It looks pretty good. It's just doesn't look like there's anything that jumps off the screen. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of bass down there or anything. Nothing really jumping off the screen right now that's telling me that I'm missing anything or that there's anything crazy going on. That brush pile might be better though later today when the sun gets up and there's that much bait and that much activity around it. Even if those are crappie, bass will feed on the crappie here too. So we may be able to come back and fish this brush pile a little bit later in the day, but we are kind of making a long run after this, so we may not be able to. But this brush pile could be a deal where you might need to hit it multiple times throughout the day. As much activity is there, but I didn't see any big fish when I graphed it. The way my 2D sonar settings work is I basically filter out all those small tiny fish that you're seeing all over the screen there. So probably the majority of the fish there in that pile are small crappie, if not all of them. So that's the deal. Okay, so that was kind of good. We let the sun get up a little bit, got the mood of the fish. Definitely not grouped up tight or getting really active right this minute. So I think what that tells me, we only fished for a few minutes, but from what I could see initially here, I probably just need to be graphing for a bigger group of fish that's actually set up, grouped up, where I can actually catch them. They're not going to be set up yet in the brush, probably super well, just as early as it is. Not always the case, but a lot of times that's the case. So I'm going to try to run down the lake. We're going to go try to hit some good places where I think these fish might be schooled up. And if we can find a group of them, 15, 20 fish stacked together, we should be able to get right in a hurry. So that's the plan. Let's see if it works. Okay, time to make a run up the lake. See if we can go find something that's better than this. I do think this spot is not bad. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm not gonna catch them here or couldn't catch them here. It's just probably a timing thing right now. But anyways, we're gonna keep rolling and try to find something a little bit different. Okay, we're good. Okay, so just gonna check a few main lake spots here. Basically, we're out here on the main lake, and I'm gonna run a few places where the main river channel swings up tight against some main lake points. So like, for example, here we have the main river channel and we have a point right here. It drops off, and we're gonna run 2 or 3 spots like that. Just graph the main lake, then head back in this creek. We kind of want to get a good feel for multiple things right now. We don't want to get tied into one particular deal too early. So you can see we have a really nice sharp drop off there. Couple of fish right there on the drop or on the break, but nothing that looked super good. But there is some stuff out there, some rock and rubble and stuff out to the right. We do have to keep in mind that thermocline is set in at 18 feet, so we can't be graphing too deep. Looks like we might be able to graph a little bit more to the right there on the side scan. But we don't want to be graphing out there in like 25, 30 feet because we know that thermocline is set up in that, let's say 20 foot or less is kind of our like general zone. We don't need to be super picky. There's a school of fish right there though. Let's see here. Where did you go? There's a school of fish right there off that log. Basically right here. We'll mark that. That looked okay. Let's get back here and keep rolling. So there is a school of fish there. There's also a couple fish that are suspended up right here. I need to regraph that again to make sure those fish actually are sitting there. Looks like that might be something. There's a lot of fish on beaver. So it's usually not that hard to find them. It's just finding the active feeding fish is the trouble most days. And finding the right species of fish at times is tricky. I need to regraph those just so I can kind of get a better sense of what species they are and what's going on. And one of those things where I might graph this school, I don't get bit right off the bat here, but we come back again later in the day and catch them. There are some fish we're seeing here on the 2D. They're sitting tighter to the bottom down there too, against some stumps and stuff, but they don't look very big. So, I mean, to be fair, the fish I saw over here didn't look that big either. But there definitely are some fish scattered on this drop. They're not stacked up exactly like I'd like them to be, and I have a feeling that some of these fish are just kind of still roaming. So that's why I want to regraph this little stump thing I marked. But it does look like there are several fish down there at least in a school. Yeah, it's a bunch of fish. They don't look very big. Those look like small spotted bass if anything, but they're also stacked up pretty tall. Those could be crappie maybe too. I would give those a chance to be crappie. The reason I say they're crappie potentially, or they're small spotted bass, is because these fish are stacked more than 4 dots tall, but they are spread pretty horizontally. So sometimes those spotted bass schools will stack up a little bit taller than your largemouth bass schools. So there's a chance that these are potentially spots. So we're gonna make a couple casts on this. This looks okay. Again, doesn't look amazing, but it looks decent. So we'll make a couple casts. There we go. Okay, so another fun stat for everyone who's keeping track at home. In addition to the idea that I'm catching better quality fish when I'm staying over 100 feet away from these fish, plus the stat that I take 2.5 hours to find fish, or actually start catching fish, not find fish, but start catching fish. In addition to those two stats, I also find that I normally catch my fish within the first, what in the world? Okay, we're good. I usually catch my fish within the first 2 to 3 casts on the spot, maybe maximum of 5 casts. So I'm not making a ton of casts on these spots to actually catch fish. So really what that tells me is I need to stay further away from these fish. If I do get them to bite right away, it's a good sign. If I don't get bit right away, then I need to not be sitting here fishing and fishing and fishing for them. And finally, it's going to take me a bit to actually find an active group of them. So don't need to get discouraged if I don't get bit right off the bat, which I kind of knew that already, but there's those fish. I don't even know if I want to make a cast on these. These don't really look that good, to be honest. Backing this up. I mean, there's a couple fish right there. Fire on those. These do not look super promising, though. Oh. Do one follow my bait? Can't tell. It looked like one was following my bait. My bait's at 60. Maybe these are, I don't know. Thermocline's a little bit deeper here too. Let me fire up. Those do look okay on the break. Those fish that are on the break there at 90 look okay. There's fish 90 to 100 feet right on that break. They don't look terrible. They don't. There's a bunch of fish down there on that break. Look at that. Just don't think. Those could be those could be spotted bass. They could. I don't know. Not sold. But the dots aren't necessarily small. I'll work my bait through them. See if one actually reacts to it. You can see all these fish are just kind of cruising around out here. I don't know what species they are, though. That's the thing. I'm going to throw a hovery at them one cast, and then we're going to roll. I'm throwing the tush on those fish. I'm going to see if I can get those fish that are like right in front of the boat, 60 feet out. But the fact that they didn't eat my the tush when they're set up like that probably means we're not dealing with, either we're not dealing with quality fish or we're not dealing with bass. So one of the two. My bait's going down to those fish. And they're not really reacting to my bait in the slightest. So it means we need to move on. Don't know what they are, to be honest. My bait's going down to them right now. But I really don't know what species they are. Pretty weird. pull more casts up on those things because they're up there high in the water column. They're on bait right there. Don't know where my bait went. There it is. Right? No? Maybe? My bait's right in that bait pod at 60 feet. It's right in the middle of all those fish, or whatever that is right there. My bait's it's in the zone. Right there, 40 feet out. Whatever those are, they're either not bass or they're not interested in what I'm putting on the table. So let's roll. 2 spots down. So I don't know, that looked kind of dubious in terms of whether those were fish or bass or not. Probably knowing I'm up in this part of the lake, I need to just be looking for largemouth schools because those small spotted bass schools might be deceiving. Okay, so we checked 2 main river spots and neither of them really worked out for us. And honestly, I don't know if I'm looking at schools of spotted bass, if I'm looking at white bass or crappie or whatever. So I'm just going to ignore all that and I'm gonna run up the river here. And usually in this part of the lake, there's more largemouth, and that's one of the reasons I like getting out here. Let me just double check we're recording. Yeah, we're good to go. I like to run up here a lot of times because if I do find a school of fish, it's very likely to be a school of largemouth, which are a lot easier for me to identify when mixed with other species, and usually they set up a little bit easier to catch. So we're gonna go run a bunch of spots here and hopefully find some largemouth, not all of these little spotted bass. Or whatever I'm graphing, I don't even know. Quick, I saw something bust off this little high spot over here. I don't know what that was about. There's a little point that sticks out here. And I saw something bust, so we'll just graph over it real fast. Just to see if there's anything special going on out here. I wasn't planning on stopping here. There's a brush pile though. That's the right on side imaging. Another brush pile on the left hand side imaging. It's interesting. Mark all of this. Let's see here. Oh, there's some more bait jumping right here. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Play it. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna graph over these piles real quick just to see if there's any fish that are actually up in the piles. Those long arches right there look like gar on the 2D, so it looks like there's some gar here. That's probably what was surfacing. More so than bass. Whenever you have big long arches on 2D, that's why I graph with 2D sonar here, guys, most of the time, because when you see fish with like really long arches, you can tell that they're gar. There are a few dots up here though, just kind of scattered. It's interesting. However, on that brush, what do we got there? Ooh, that's a nice looking school. Look at that right there. And then there's a school right there, 10 foot, and then see how those dots in that brush pile are a lot smaller? If we switch to traditional, you can see that these arches are showing up a lot better on the 2D. I need to mark that right there. I'm stopping on every spot that I fish. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. This is my problem on beaver, is normally I spend more time fishing than graphing because there's so much good looking stuff everywhere. And I need to sometimes chill it, but like that looks good. And we're seeing, I don't know, those arches and everything that we saw in here on the traditional. The reason I'm thinking these aren't GAR is because those arches are pretty short and stout, kind of. They don't look super big, but they're definitely look decent. And that's kind of giving me the impression. I did see some GAR too, which I think is what was surfacing, but those might be some bass. They could be roamers though, so I need to get up here kind of quick if they're just roaming around. Give me a second here. Okay, we gotta get up here kind of fast. I see them busting up there. Gotta be observant and keep your eyes open for this sort of stuff when you're on the lake, guys. Some shad down there. Where's that school at? They're way up on top of this point. But I could see these fish dropping back in this brush pile here at some point, but I'm gonna ignore this brush pile. It's right underneath the boat right now. Because they could drop back to this thing later, but the quality fish I saw were further up on this drop. Before I start freaking throwing up there and catching some, I need to make sure we're still recording. Yeah, we're good, okay. So they're pretty shallow up there on that deal. They were at least. See if we can actually see anything. Scope around. Something over there. What's all that over there? Are those all those fish? Did they move that fast, that far already? Are those fish? I can't tell. Have to be. I'm not seeing anything up there. These are just roamers. Looks like it. Just roaming on this point around those bait balls. Don't know if these fish are even catchable, to be honest. We might just be in that weird time of day. These do look like bass, though, to be fair. We might be in that weird time of day where they're still kind of just up and roaming quite a bit. It might be hard to get one to actually commit. Look at that right there. Looks pretty good, though. Where's that waypoint? So they're definitely moving a lot. My bait actually sink down there all the way. It's a bunch of fish right there, though. My bait through them. Guess we're gonna find out what's happening. Busting up there too. Real shallow. There's fish busting all over. There's a lot of activity in this area. Oh, there was one. Dang it, he hit it hard. I don't know if you even saw that. He may have seen that in the Livescope. One tapped it really hard there. Dang. Quite a few fish down there. I don't know what they all are. so much happening in this area. It's like disorienting. This is like some of the hardest stuff when there's so many fish in a spot. It's hard to tell what's happening. Like those fish, my bait's dropping at 60 feet. These fish are not necessarily like coming up and getting interested in it, to be honest. They're just, oh, that one kind of did. Okay, they're kind of following it around, which is at least one or two of them are following it around, which is a relatively good sign. They're not really getting after it, are they? There's that brush pile. Ooh. Bunch of fish right there came up to look at my bait. Oh, what are those? Those are not bass. Okay, well, we know that those are not bass. So let's move up here, see if we can see any of those fish that we saw randomly cruising up here. I'm gonna try cranking up there for a second. Those fish were up there pretty shallow. They're in like 10 foot that we saw earlier. Should be right in front of us if they were there, but they're just roamers. They're not fish that are actually set up on anything. They're just moving around kind of randomly. There's a lot of them though right there. Back us up a little bit. Yeah, whatever these fish are, I don't know what they are doing, and they're kind of set up very weird, to be honest. I think that some of these are bass, though. I just think we're in that, like it's like 6:30 in the morning, and these fish just haven't got them. Oh gosh, okay, maybe those are bass. They're just up there real shallow. Had to crank them. This is right on that waypoint that I marked with those fish. So these random fish that are out here, these might be the gar, because I was out here kind of randomly doing it. And then here's, well, it's not a very big one, but it is one of those fish that I graphed up there. It's just a little spotted bass on the deep diving crankbait. This is a Spro, oh, he's peeing, come on fish. It's a Spro Outsider DD80. Just a little spotted bass, but at least I know that I did graph bass. I guess when you looked at that school, there weren't like really big arches now that I'm thinking about it, like in hindsight. So it wasn't like I was dealing with really big fish, but there we go. Little spotted bass there on the deep diving crankbait. You can see these fish up here on Livescope a little bit. See if I can get them up there again. They're sitting, those aren't the fish. That's a brush pile. You can see some of the fish that are really hard to see. They're up there in like 70 feet of water, 40 to 70 feet. Let me take the depth range down 1 degree. So you can see them out there 50 to 70 feet. Kind of hard to see, to be honest. Right there they are, look at them. 60 feet out, 70 feet out, there's a pile of them. They kind of, can't keep them locked in the Livescope, but there's definitely a wad of fish out there just off this long point, but they're real shallow. They're like 10 foot. They're not out here deeper, so that's interesting, and that also kind of gives us a little bit of a clue potentially that maybe these fish are setting up shallower than I'm thinking. I'm gonna burn this crankbait around a little bit more. There's that group that's underneath us, but those look like very small fish, to be fair. Right there, look at that. You can see them down there at 50 foot. They're just kind of, look at all those fish down there on the bottom. 50 foot out, They're glued to the bottom. This crankbait should be the way to catch them. I'm surprised I honestly didn't get bit by another one. The next cast, usually on a spot like this, when they're doing that, you can get multiple bites, but there are some fish that are chasing way up there. I'm using a really deep diving crankbait, just so you guys know, on a pretty shallow school, but I like doing that. I like cranking and really digging the bottom versus getting a crankbait that just like barely hits the depth. Oh, got him. Oh no, dang it. Came off. What the heck? Barely felt him. They're busting. Schooling over here. Get that bait over there. Schooling out here. School kind of simmered down for a second. I'm gonna try to reposition on him, cast across the point the other direction. They're not quite set up right yet. I think we're like an hour too early, I think. Oh, that's probably best to hold my bait all the way back to the boat. There, didn't need it. I'm gonna try to reposition on these fish because you can see them all down there. See all those fish? I mean, they're freaking down there. Just trying to reposition to get maybe coming across the point would be better, but they're all out there at 90 feet, 80, 70, 80, 90 feet. There's a pile of them. So at least that school that I graphed that looked like bass was bass, and I caught one of them. So that is a good sign. Not the size we're looking for, but at least we know what we're looking for and that we kind of have a clue now. A lot of times that's all you really need when you get out here is a clue. Look at all those fish down there. 60 feet out. 12 foot of water. These are perfect crankbait fish. Look at them all. Just a matter of finding a bait that they'll actually eat. Because there's a pile of them up there. Try throwing this. I'm throwing the tush over at him, and I might also drag a worm on him in a second. Get my backlash out. See if they'll eat this thing. If they don't bite this, then we might drag a worm down there for a second. See if they're in more of a on the bottom worm type mood before we move on. There's a lot of them down there. Oh, one hit it. Oh, come on, fish. Look at them down there. Some down there even at 50 feet just going crazy. It's a nice school of fish, to be honest. There's one on my bait at 30 feet. Just not that interested. There's some fish over there. They're kind of all up on this point. There's a bunch of fish on this point right here. Not very big, but there are a bunch of fish. The reason I can tell you they're not super big is just because they won't. Oh, got them. There we go. That's a good one. On the tush. Finally. Wouldn't eat the crankbait after that first one, but got one on the tush. It feels like a better one too. Yeah, it's a better largemouth. That's what I'm talking about right here. It's the size fish we were looking for. Oh, golly, I knew that was gonna happen. Oh, it's a 2-pound largemouth on the tush. The 3/8 ounce tush with the Hog Farmer spunk shad. Dang it, I barely had it too. And I knew that was gonna happen. I knew if I boat flipped him, he was gonna throw it, but that was still bad. That was a bad fish landing. Oh my gosh, they're schooling. Oh, get over there. Dang, you're going crazy up on this point now. You spot locked. Get over there. Man, that was a good one too. Eat it, come on. Oh, I can't believe I lost that fish. They're going crazy up on this point. Found themselves a spot, which is good at least. That was a good one though. That was a 2 1/4 pounder, which on beaver, they're gold out here. It's a good largemouth. I wish you guys could have seen it though. But I mean, I saw it, which is good for me. At least I know I'm doing the right thing, and found the spot, which is good. Oh, come on. Hitting it, and they're just swiping at it. That sometimes happens with this tush and the spunk shad, is they kind of get a little bit on the side of the mouth. They don't like choke it if you set the hook too soon. I think I got a little bit excited and set the hook a little bit too soon on that last one. And he threw it, but definitely a good sign that we're around the right fish. You saw those dots on, there's some decent dots on the 2D or decent arches on the 2D and some decent dots on the down imaging. And so there are some quality fish around this area, and they're just up there way shallower than I was kind of expecting them to be. They're up here in like 5 to 8 foot, maybe 10 foot range. And like that one I did not see again on the Livescope. My better quality fish didn't see on the Livescope, and he bit way away from the boat as far as I could cast. Didn't like see him up there or anything, but just kind of knew he was in the general area. He was literally right on that waypoint that we made. I mean, dead on it. So maybe the old waypoint method might be the way to go, as opposed to messing with the Livescope, because we fired on all those fish we saw on the Livescope, and well, didn't exactly work for us. I do think I pulled a lot of those fish off that drop though when I caught that largemouth, because there's a lot of fish that are down here, but they were just busting over here too a second ago. So I couldn't have pulled them all off, I guess. Now I'm thinking about it, but I should have just probably tried to swing that fish in, as opposed to doing what I did, which is a terrible fish landing. Sometimes like when I'm worried so much, when the fish are like barely pinned, I get so worried and I try to like do something crazy versus just not worrying about it and just swinging them in, just getting them in the boat. And a lot of times that works better for me. Sometimes the harder you try, the worse the results. A lot of times. The thing is that I don't think this is necessarily a unique spot in terms of, oh, he hit that so hard. Get it, fish. Oh, golly. Ah, look at him on the Livescope. They're going crazy on it. Oh my gosh, look at all those fish. And they all hit it. And none of them committed. What in the world? I got bit 5 times on that cast. Pulled my shorts down, look at that. They were like bam, 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 bam. They didn't get it. What the heck? So confused. One schooling over there. I think I can find more spots like this, but I'm getting bit, so I probably shouldn't just leave. I have a bad habit of that too, is I'm like, caught fish here, let's go find another spot. I like doing that. I like, honestly, for me, finding new fish, new schools and stuff is the most fun part. Not always trying to like maximize a spot, but also want to try to see if I can catch a good largemouth off the spot to show you one of them, as opposed to just losing one of them. But it's cool because when you saw the first couple spots and what it looked like on the 2D sonar on the down imaging and how it just didn't quite look right, and then you saw this spot and you kind of saw what looked right. And I have a bad habit recently too of feeling like I can just pull up on any spot because I have the Livescope and catch fish and almost like ignore what I've known about bass fishing my whole life and like what I've learned about how to catch them. And I did a little experiment out here on Beaver. I've been doing little experiments after these Uncut videos because I'll finish up and I'll have, 3-4 hours still I can fish. And what I basically have been doing is I would graph spots with my side imaging, down imaging 2D sonar. I would say, okay, what I did was brush piles the other day, and I graphed a pile of brush piles, like 30 of them. And I said, this brush pile looks like one that should have a fish in it. I think I can catch one here. And then there were like 5 other, or 25 other brush piles or whatever that didn't have what looked like to be quality fish in them. And so there was like 3 or 4 brush piles that looked like it had a few spotted bass in them. And when I actually went to fish all 30 brush piles, I caught 1 quality fish out of the 1 spot that I thought had quality fish. And then, oh, that's not a bass. And then I fished 25 brush piles that looked like they had nothing and didn't catch a single fish. And I caught small fish out of the 4 brush piles that I thought had small fish in them. So my instinct on what the size fish were on the graph, using 2D sonar, all that stuff was spot on. I just haven't been trusting it fully. Like even on that first spot, I should have trusted to be like, doesn't look like the fish are really grouped up that much. Or, on the second spot, these don't look like they are bass. Instead of wasting time even making casts on those spots, trying to validate, which I try to do quite often because I want to make sure I'm not going crazy, I should just focus on what I know look like bass and just fish those. But that's so hard to do at times because I've also had situations where I catch fish out of schools like the ones I already showed you, and I feel like I'm missing something. But I would say that only happens, oh, come on, fish. Just get it. Maybe I'm setting the hook too soon on him or something because he hit that hard. Gotta be a small spotted bass. Again, there wasn't that many big ones on the big arches. Anyways, man, that's annoying. He hit that really hard. Let me go to a hair jig for a second. I want to see if I can, I'll finish my story here in a second. Sorry guys. I'm gonna go to the hair jig just to see if they'll eat it better today. Some days they like the hair jig. Some days I like the tush. I like to start with the tush because usually it gets me a better quality bite over the hair jig. The hair jig gets me a better quality bite than like a swim bait, for example. But, whoa, look at that cast. But I find the tush gets me a better quality bite even than the hair jig. So I'll start with the tush to try to catch the best quality fish I can. Then a lot of times I'll pull out a hair jig, then I'll pull out like a swim bait. It's kind of like a rotation deal, but get my range a little deeper. I'm just gonna try the hair jig because sometimes they just will eat it better. Kind of depends on the day, to be honest. So what I was saying is that I sometimes don't trust my instincts enough on like what a good spot is, because before Livescope you couldn't drop your trolling motor and just see everything is in the water. And the only way I kind of determined whether I would fish or not was what I saw on the 2D sonar and the down imaging. And I probably stopped a lot less back in the day on average, but I also feel like I catch quite a few more fish when I get up on spots. So it's like, it's a blessing and a curse. I do end up catching more fish probably with the Livescope on than I do without it. But at the same time, I spend more time fishing than graphing, which in general is not a good idea offshore. You should be graphing more so than fishing. Look at all those fish right there. And I also stay on spots, I feel like, sometimes for too long. I'll try to be out on the spot for like 30 minutes, or fish a spot for 30 minutes when I probably should only fish it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And that happens quite often too. So I'm trying to avoid that. But like on a spot like this where I've now had 2 bites, it's worth kind of milking it a little bit more. I don't really feel like I need to be fishing a jig or anything necessarily, dragging on this, because these fish are just roaming and moving. But a hair jig, the tush with the spunk shad, those sorts of things, those are great baits to kind of cover a good amount of water and try to follow these fish, because you can see that these fish on the Livescope are just kind of, they're just roaming and cruising everywhere right now. They're not set up in one particular spot. They're just kind of up around this point, up on the top of it. I caught my one good fish way up there, which I'm going to make a pass with that tush way up on top of that thing here in a second. I just have gotten like 4 bites right here, so I want to see if I can get one of them to commit, actually. Make one more cast with the hair jig, then we're going to go back to the tush, because tush seem to be what they're biting it really well. And also, like, all those bites I'm getting on the tush most likely are the smaller spotted bass, like the one I caught cranking. And they pull your pants down and they make you feel like you're getting bit by a bunch of quality fish when really you're just getting small spotted bass nipping at it. And that's another reason why I like throwing that. The hair jig like I'm throwing now, plus the tush with the spunk shad, is it gets through those small spotted bass, it gets through those smaller fish, and you're gonna catch, on average, a better quality fish, a 2+ pound bass on that bait. And that's what we're looking for out here right now. I mean, beaver, I think the last team tournament that was out here, it took 13 pounds, or last individual, it was an individual series tournament. It took 13 pounds to win, and then to get like a top 10, you needed like 11 pounds. So the weights were really tight, but you basically need a 2 pound average fish, and then one, ooh, golly, they're going crazy up there. You need a 2 pound average fish and like 1 3 pounder, and you're in business. Come on, fish. Man, I can't catch the schooling fish today. It's weird. I can only catch the fish here down the bottom. The other day when I was on Lake Uchi, I could only catch the schooling fish. I couldn't catch the fish on the bottom. Today it's the literal exact opposite. It's so weird. Work my way up onto this point a little bit further. And then we're gonna keep graphing and keep hitting stuff, because I think I can find a better school with a few more big fish in it. I mean, it'd be nice if I could find a school that has a dozen 2 pounders in it versus just a handful. And that way I have a better shot of actually catching a good limit. Because again, you need 5 2 pounders, or technically 4 2 pounders and a 3 pounder, and you're in the top 10 out of a, 80 boat field. So really it's not that crazy to catch a good bag out here on beaver if you just get on the right stuff. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. But we can always come back too and refish this. There's those brush piles. All these fish are probably gonna pull back to that brush pile. They're up here chasing in the morning, and then they'll pull back out to the brush piles and stuff later in the afternoon. I don't see, there's a bunch of fish right there cruising. "8 feet of water, 70 feet in front of the boat." There's a pile of fish right there. Look at them all. They're just all over the bottom. Golly. These are all bass too. There's a bunch of them down there. Oh, one's up on my bait right now. They're too close to the boat. I got too close to them. I mean, I was firing on these fish every single cast. These fish, they're really close to the boat right now, like 40 feet. That's what I was firing on. Oh, one just bit it. But, yeah, when you get too close to them, they get spooked and they won't eat. So that's fine. I fired on these fish enough. Okay, let's roll and try fishing our spot real quick. What are all those doing out there? That's just a bunch of randomness now. There's fish busting out there. There's a bunch of just randoms just out here too. You fire out on those just to see what's what. Bait's 90 feet out right now. See if I can get one of these fish to actually come and eat my bait. Bait's 70 feet out. We're in the middle of all those fish. Nobody's coming to look at my bait, so don't know what these are out here. But whatever they are, they're not interested in what I'm selling. Fine. Fire on these couple fish right up here. Probably gar. Well, I'm even wasting a cast on them, to be honest. Oh, I say that, and then they freaking come and torch my bait. Oh my gosh, how hard can you hit my bait and not eat it, fish? Are you serious? Wow. I got smashed on that cast. And they didn't eat it. That's so weird. Gotta be all small spotted bass to do that. You can see them all in the graph. They're just all over, but it's wild. Got hit really hard by two fish there. Neither of them actually got it in their mouth. Gotta be small. Oh, there's one right there. Looking at it, 60 feet out. Well, for proving my theory right now, the only one quality fish I got to bite, I did not see on Livescope and was really far away from the boat, so I don't know if that proves anything, but we're gonna keep rolling because there's a lot more spots in here I wanna check out. But that spot was not bad. I just lost the one quality fish that did bite, so maybe we just need to pull up and hit a bunch of spots that look similar. And I mean, if we have a full day of fishing, 8 hours, I think we could run this pattern because this is a pretty obvious looking point and there's a bunch of points that look just like this. So we're gonna keep running. Okay, so let's find a spot with some better quality fish on it. I think that we have at least an idea now of what we should be looking for. There's another point right around the corner here I'll graph. We need to be looking for those better quality dots. We know we need to look for on 2D sonar, and honestly, that's just gotta be the deal. And I gotta stop only when I see the right deal on the graph that I know are bass. And we need to find a spot with some better quality bass, because that last spot, we only had 2 or 3 decent arches on the screen when I graphed over it. A lot of them were smaller spotted bass. We got probably 8 bites off that spot, maybe 9 bites on that tush with the spunk shad on it, but we only connected with one of them, and that fish came off, which I think that was the only quality fish that bit it. And I mean, I normally don't have any problems losing fish on the tush unless they're smaller fish. Once in a while one will swipe at it, but usually it's not that big of a deal. So that just tells me, I have a feeling that the majority of those fish were smaller. So we just got to find a school of multiple 2 to 3 pounders versus just finding these schools of spotted bass mixed with the largemouth. We need to find a full largemouth school, and even that school, or that spot right there, if we kind of take a look at it, it was much more towards the main lake than, make sure this is all going properly. Yeah, we're good. This spot is much more towards the main lake that we were just on compared to in this creek. So this spot here probably is gonna have more spotted bass on it than anything else. As we get further back in this creek, we should be seeing fewer spotted bass and more largemouth, at least is the theory. So that's what we need to be doing. There's a bunch of junk right there. What is that? There's a pile of fish right there, but they all look very small on the 2D, so we're just gonna ignore that. We're not gonna fish anything else today unless we know we can see multiple quality fish, because that's anything else that's doesn't have multiple quality fish is kind of a waste of time for us, because we could just stay on that spot and I could pull out a drop shot and I catch as many little 12-inch Kentuckys as I want. But that's not really the goal. We want to catch quality, so we need to graph for quality if we're going to catch quality. Again, I use my 2D sonar settings. I need to make a guide for this Garmin unit. I have the settings dialed in to the point now where I like them. But basically what I do with this Garmin unit is I took the settings down. I do this on Humminbird and Lowrance. I take the settings on this 2D sonar to the point where I filter out all the smaller fish and only the bigger fish will actually pop on 2D, and it works really well. I've had to dial it in because you kind of have to know what size fish you're looking at and when you catch them to kind of get it dialed. But now basically all the fish that pop decently, even halfway decent, are like 2+ pound fish. Everything that's below that size barely shows up on my 2D sonar, and it's very convenient for lakes like Beaver Lake where you basically have a lot of small fish. There's a couple fish up here on the graph. You can see there's some fish scattered on this point, and if we switch over to this combo view, you can see we have a nice little school, and it looks like we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nice dots. The 2D, there's a bunch of dots, and on the traditional, there's not nearly as many dots, but there are enough. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 fish that probably are in that 1.75 to 2 pound range in that school, which is probably enough to justify fishing there, because if we can just get one of those fish to bite, we're doing pretty well. I'll switch back over here. We'll graph back over that school to make sure that that's actually a legit school. The arches don't look as defined as they did on the other school, so we might need to, I just want to regraph them to make sure I know exactly what I'm looking at. But I did find a school of big school of spotted bass out here earlier this year, but they're not there now, apparently. They were very small spotted bass, so it wasn't like I was lighting the world on fire with them. But we definitely have something going on over here that looked okay. I just don't know. Probably worth a few casts. If I can catch 1 2 pounder out of this school, probably is worth it. And then I could just move on really quickly. If they're still here. If they've moved, that just tells me that we're dealing with roaming fish and we don't even need to mess with them. So as you can see, that school it's still kind of there-ish, but these fish are definitely roaming. Because it's not exactly where we graphed them, but they are there, and like that's that school. You can see them pretty clearly on the 2D. So like this right here is that school on down imaging, and then you can see the school pretty clearly. There's a couple of fish over here. 1, 2 decent fish. Those are the only 2 decent fish I see out of that school, but probably enough to make a couple casts. Been finding a lot of schools today, which is nice, but not necessarily the quality. But let's just make like 2 casts, 3 casts on those things with a hair jig or a tush, see if we can get a bite, and then we can keep rolling, because I really just want to see if I can. Usually the biggest fish in the school bite first or second cast, so we'll just try that and see if it works. Okay, we're rolling, we're good. Pull out the tush, the spunk shad. Get lined up on that school really fast. I don't want to waste a lot of time on this deal. The school's kind of roaming too, so I kind of need to figure out where it's at. These fish would lock down a lot better if the sun was out in the middle of the day. There's that school. Bunch of them out there. Like, they're moving so fast. Back us up a little bit. Bait's down, getting down to them. Are any of you gonna bite? Golly, there's a bunch of fish busting around. Bunch of random schoolers out here. Schooling over here. Fish are not interested. School was a little bit deep for that school. I think maybe those are the fish right there. No waypoint. Okay, they're still up there quite a ways actually. It's a bunch of schoolers out here, but a lot of times these little schoolers are just spotted bass and stuff, so I'm not going to mess with them. Even though there's a lot of schooling activity going on around here. Maybe I could get on some of these schools and see if I can actually catch one or follow one, because it seems like there's a lot of fish in that. Like there's a school over there that's been busting for 15, 20 seconds. Which isn't bad. If I could follow them, I might be able to hover rig them and swim bait them. Where'd that big school go? It may have just been a random school too, but no, there's some fish down there. They're actually tight to the bottom. Oh my gosh, they're busting right behind me. Oh, come on, fish. They're too small to eat the tush. Whatever little spotted bass or whatever they're doing, they're not big enough to eat my bait. Look at them all. They're all over it. Oh my gosh, look at them on the Livescope. They're going crazy. Let me throw my little baby hover over there. They'll eat this thing first cast, I bet. It's that little Bass Tricks shad. Where'd they go? There they are. They're gonna come and just eat this thing, I bet. Unless it's the water's too dirty for it. No, they're not eating. Even the baby? That's interesting. Not eating the tiny bait. That's kind of weird. They hit the tush though. Huh. Maybe the bait fish are bigger up here than they were down the lake. You can see all those fish out there. I'm not going to stop messing with those though. I need to find the school that's up here. A brush pile or something? I don't know what that is. Or just fish on bait. Man, there's so many schoolers. It's crazy. Yeah, that school that I found earlier, it's just like roamed off somewhere. So I'm right in their area of where they were, and they're just kind of gone. See if I can scope up here a little bit shallower, because that last spot, that's where those fish were. Or shallower up on this point. Maybe they're doing the same thing here. Just blind fire up there. I really don't want to chase schoolers because it's not very consistent of a bite, but at the same time, there's that. Is that school? There's a lot of fish busting, so it almost makes me want to chase the schoolers just a little bit. Just trying to see if I can find that wad of decent fish that was over here. Is that them right there? About to find out. Yeah, the other fish I was seeing earlier were just, well, there's some fish down there. A lot of them are roamers. I'm gonna just kind of get out here and for a second because there's a bunch of freaking schoolers out here. Just want to see if I can catch one. Oh, there's some fish. I kind of need to move around with this Livescope because there's so many fish that are just roaming and chasing right now, and they're just not locked into anything because of the time of day. The fish are very active. If you get around one, they'll eat it. It's just they move so fast. So that's a thing. Make sure I'm not missing anything crazy up here before I head out into the abyss. There's so many fish busting out there. Okay, we're gonna go out and chase these schoolers around because there's a big group of them up here, or out here. Just do it for a second, see if I can see anything that looks good. I'm also gonna just kind of scan down this to see if there's anything, like a group on the edge of this ledge or something that I missed when I graphed. I'll fire out there and see what's that's about. Nice big rock there. But maybe a couple fish on top of that, actually. Kind of hard to tell. Yeah, there's a couple fish out there. They look very big. Just follow my bait down. Just not eating it. Okay. Let's get out here on these schoolers for a second. Just for a second, and then we're going to keep graphing. That one school moves so fast so that I had found. It'd take but a minute for it to move. Okay, so we should be able to see these schoolers pretty easily on the Livescope. They should be still schooling under the surface, like, oh, there they are. You can see them right there, they're going crazy. Got him. There we go. Not a bad one. Finally ate the tush. It's not a good one, but it's not a bad one. It's a little largemouth right there. Schoolers out here. I want to see if there's any better quality schoolers though, because there's a lot of them out here. Wow, they follow that fish all the way back to the boat. Look at them all underneath there. So basically what I'm looking for on this Livescope is I just want to see fish that are up on near the surface that are grouped up all around the shad. And usually when you catch one of these fish, it'll kind of pull the school to you, so you kind of have to find another one. But fortunately, the reason it's even worth doing right now is because there's so many little groups of them busting all over the place, so you can kind of just wander around out here and find them and then fire on them. And with the bait I'm throwing, I should be getting at least relatively better bites. That last fish was not a really great indicator of that. It's funny how that fish eats the bait, but then the other like 7 that I've had tried to bite it just didn't. Oh, there's some fish over here. So what I'm also looking for specifically is there's a lot of bait out here. So you can see there's bait on the screen 60, 70 feet out. But what I'm looking for in particular is I want to find a group of fish around the bait, not just the bait. You don't just want to cast on the bait. You want to find the dots that are also mixed in with the bait. More often than not, you want to find a lot of dots. So you wait till you see 10, 15 dots around one smaller ball of bait compared to a couple of fish around a big ball of bait, because it's hard to differentiate it's hard for the fish to differentiate your bait from the shad. So you need to stack the odds in your favor, and that usually means you just need to kind of be patient and wait until you see the right thing. I'll point out the right thing here when we find some. There's a couple fish right there. There's a fish that's like pushing those shad. It's about to come up to the surface around 70, 80 feet out, which is one fish, so I'm not going to fire on that. I'm going to wait till I see several fish, because as soon as my bait gets out there, there might be a scenario where I see something that looks better and I just miss my opportunity. And there's just a bunch of bait and a bunch of fish roaming out here. You just kind of have to wait for it all to kind of start happening around you. Man, they're busting over there. They're busting all through here. I mean, from here all the way down this stretch, it's just loaded with fish. It's hard to tell if there's any good ones. We're going to make our way down here, and I'm just going to fish for these for about 5 minutes, and then if I don't catch a good one, we're going to keep running actual structure, because that's a lot more consistent than running these schoolers. Oh, is that? No. Now, this is why I don't put my Livescope on a pole. A lot of people ask me why I don't have it on a pole. And that's because of, there's a couple fish. I want to be able to follow these fish around like this and be able to make big sweeps side to side versus having to do it with my hand. And then also, like, I don't like having my hands tied up with a pole while also trying to do this and hunt for these fish back and forth on the shad, it's just too much to keep track of compared to just having your the Livescope on the trolling motor where you can move it back and forth like this. There's a couple fish. There's some fish right there that look like they're kind of higher up. Oh, there they all are. Come on, fish. About to come up busting here. Probably. There's a lot of them right there. Where'd they go? Come on now. There they are. You can see them out there like 30, 40 feet in front of the boat. There's like a bunch of them. Several dots, 7 or 8. That's what we want to see. Come on, eat it, fish. Man, if it's too close to the boat, they won't touch it. You gotta find them when they're way out in front of you. Look at all those fish. Come on. Come on. They're all over it. Eat it. Wow. Search this little mini bait, see if that works. Down the lake, I was catching these schoolers, and they were actually good ones, like good smallmouth. So there are good fish you can catch doing this. It's just kind of just depends. You gotta find a lot of times the right bait too. Just the right deal every time. Oh, a couple fish on my bait right now. It's interesting because like sometimes I like that real small bait, and then sometimes they just won't touch it. I'm just gonna try firing out there. Really far away from the boat, just keep my distance. See if that actually gets one to fire. Oh, one hit it, come on fish. That's gotta be the deal. Ah! Gotta stay really far away from these fish to actually get them to bite. Just work that thing fast in the water column. You can see them out there 100 feet on the Livescope. Oh, you hit it, come on. Eat a fish, come on. Come on. There's a bunch of fish on my bait. They won't actually take it though. Got hit 4 times on that last cast. Look at all those fish down there on the Livescope. Bunch of them. Fish right here. All about it. They're just all small. That's our problem right now. Just a lot of little ones. Oh, I saw that before that developed. That was cool. Oh, come on. They're going crazy in front of the boat there. One of you just eat it. Just actually take it in your mouth. Oh gosh. Just keep hitting it. These gotta be all small. I don't know. Gotta be all small bottom bass because they just can't take this thing in their mouth. Busting behind the boat, busting everywhere. I'm wasting time, though. Hopefully it's kind of interesting at least. I mean, there's like 10 fish on my bait right now. Oh my gosh. It's fun though. It's hard to like not chase these schoolers because it's just action-packed. They're busting, they're fighting for food, getting taps. Just really want to catch a good one. That's why I'm keeping this bait tied on instead of trying to go to a deal. But also, like, I threw that little tiny bait around and they won't commit to that either. So it's not like I know exactly a good bait. I also don't really want to catch these 12 inchers, to be honest. I want to get a good one. So my idea would be if I can get these, if these little ones aren't eating it, my bait would eventually get down to the better quality fish. That's the theory, at least. But there just may not be that many better quality fish out here, which is kind of surprising. As many fish as I've, I mean, look at that on the screen. That's the deal right there. That's the juice. There's just a bunch of fish. They're all over the bait. Maybe someone can take advantage of these schooling shots on a lake that has bigger fish than beaver and actually catch fish doing this, but right now this is not the deal. To catch the quality fish. So let's get out of here. There's a bunch of fish around. I haven't caught one yet, literally, other than that one small largemouth. So we're gonna keep rolling. Oh gosh, okay, I say that. Freaking, they come up busting like that. You gotta make one cast over there. Come on. One has to actually get it. Come on. 4 hit it. Got him. Finally. One of them actually gets it in their mouth. I'll show you the size of the fish that have been biting me constantly, literally nonstop. They're all this size. So it's not the size we are looking for by any means, but it's fun throwing on them, if anything. But that's why it's hard for them to get that bait in their mouth, but it's also the only bait I can get them to actually react to. I guess it's the dirty water or something. And the way I'm fishing this thing is I'm just reeling it fast near the surface. They're coming up and getting it, they're biting it. And I'm trying to just wait on them. Oh my gosh, they're over there too. I'm never gonna be able to stop, guys. This is too addicting. There's just fish blowing up in every direction. Look at them all. On the Livescope, they're just going crazy. On the surface, they're going crazy. They're going crazy everywhere. They're blowing up behind the boat. Oh my goodness. Okay, I honestly just need to put it down. Every time I want to put it down, they start doing this right in front of me. They won't let me leave, guys. Oh, I'm just gonna have to make the decision to leave while they're busting in front of me, which is gonna be a very hard decision, but we're gonna make it here in a second. So we're gonna keep looking for them. Gotta look for a group of them that's set up and it's bigger. Let me roll around just for a second longer, just to see. Probably should leave while they're not busting. That's probably a good idea. I want to see if I see anything that looks bigger. There are definitely bigger fish deeper underneath down there. I don't know if I could catch those fish with like a jigging spoon or something. Maybe that might be a, like there's those fish that are down there in 50 or in like 16 feet. Maybe that's a deal. Let me try that real fast. I just want to see if maybe have a jigging spoon. If I have a jigging spoon tied on, I'll throw it. If not, I do. I might try just chunking this big flutter spoon in front of their face for just a second to see if any of those fish that are underneath these schools are bigger. Sometimes that's a deal. So you can see on these schools, there's like, you find one of those better group of dots that was sitting down there in like 16. It's like right there. It's a bunch of fish. You can see them all following my bait now. They're following it. Look at all those fish right there. They're busting literally right here, which is perfect. I'll throw that spoon at them. If any fish there further underneath, maybe they'll actually come and eat it. Better quality fish at least. Done this before. It has worked, but maybe not today. Okay, let's go. You can waste a lot of your day fishing for schoolers and stuff like that, so you gotta just know when to quit it. I thought that maybe I could catch a 2-pounder doing it, and if you catch a 2-pounder doing it at some point, you could then hopefully do it all day because you're getting enough potential bites that you could run it all day and maybe catch 5, but it doesn't seem like there's enough quality out here to justify that. Maybe if I get in a different area where they're doing this, it would be better. This area just is a lot of fish, but not a lot of size. Okay, so they're literally blowing up all around me on all sides, and we are leaving them, which is a painful choice, but we gotta make it because we gotta find some better quality fish. And we have the potential keys to the kingdom with that first spot where I had that good largemouth up in that shallower water, 8 to 10 foot zone, up on top of one of those points. I think I can replicate that back in the back of this creek. So we're gonna keep doing that because I think that's my way of catching good ones, at least right now. And then as the sun would get up later in the day, which I'm not gonna be recording by the time it gets to that point. I'm not gonna be able to keep the cameras going that long. But usually you can pull up and catch the fish out of brush piles. So ideally, if I could catch 2 to 3 2-pounders in the morning, and then catch 2 to 3 brush pile fish in the afternoon, that'd be a really good beaver day for like a tournament. So really my goal would be to catch 1 or 2 more of those 2-pounders, assuming I would have caught that first one that jumped off. Really I just need, 2 more 2-pound bites this morning before, say 10 o'clock, before that brush pile bite turns on, and we'd be in business. So let's try to make that happen. Okay, so here we are, another big flat point that drops off into the creek channel. So the point is here, drops off into the creek channel here. Just a good spot for fish to set up in the summertime. This is very traditional summertime stuff here on Beaver Lake and all these highland reservoirs up these rivers. So we're gonna graph this, see if we can find anything, find a school that's actually set up. There's brush out here, which is, I mean, that looks pretty good right there, even just that on the side scan, shoot. You can see there's a nice brush pile. Doesn't look like there's anything crazy around. There's a couple fish though I can see down there, right there. If we zoom in, you can see, you can't really see it super well. Right there, there's a handful of fish next to that brush pile. So that might be something to go check. Where are we at? Here we go. It's more in that 10-foot zone, which is kind of what we were looking for. There's a bunch of brush and debris and rubble right there on this break, which looks really good. It's what these fish should be pulling up into, especially as the sun gets up. I like that brush pile though, that was kind of off that flat. There were a couple random fish that were scattered around it. That didn't look too bad. It's kind of out of the way too, maybe further away from the drop, so it may not get as much pressure. But I also want to see, I think we should be able to find a school up here. I'm surprised we haven't even seen one yet. But there were definitely some fish on that brush. This is like the first spot we've graphed where we haven't seen like a school immediately. School of anything. Which makes me more curious about that brush pile over here. We'll regraph this real quick. If not, then we'll run around the corner, check another spot. Looking on side scan too, to see if I see any fish on side scan or if I see anything crazy. It's like that perfect time of the day sun-wise where I can't really see the screen with my sunglasses on, but it's bright enough that I want my sunglasses on, so I'm doing the professor style, like glasses on the nose sort of thing. Some fish on side scan right there, just kind of scattered out here. Kind of interesting. Graph this pile, see if there's any fish in it. No fish in the pile. Couple fish around the pile. Bunch of little crappie and stuff. There's one decent size arch there. Okay. Finally a spot that doesn't look actually like we should fish it. Just kind of relieving. So these next two spots we're going to graph, I did find a school of largemouth on about a month ago. That's zero guarantee that they're going to be here, because it's funny because a lot of the spots that I fished today, I graphed a month ago and had no fish on them, and now today they have fish on them. So if we go by that logic, this spot may have no fish on it because they may have repositioned and moved, but we're going to try at least. Some fish at least down there. Actually a pretty big number of fish. I just don't know what those all are. These can't all be bass. There's a bunch of junk out here. It's funny because that other point had like nothing. I don't know what all that is. That can't all be bass. Very dubious. There's a lot of gar I can see on side scan. There's a bunch of just junk on this point. Not to say you can't catch bass out of that, but it doesn't look that great, to be honest. That's where I saw that bass school earlier. There's still some decent fish down there. They're kind of in that little like weird depression-y thing. I don't know. They're right on that waypoint though. Some rock and stuff down there. It's a big brush pile, some fish on it. Looks like there's some decent fish on that brush pile too. 1 or 2 decent arches. Okay, so let's mark this brush pile. Let's fish that little depression ditch thing that had those few better arches in it, and check that out real quick. Okay, there we go. So got this brush pile lined up here. I'll fire a big swim bait over the top of it to start. No takers on that deal. Looks like there's some fish down there though. More cast with the big swim bait. I'll cast a jig down there too, just to see. But not seeing anything crazy down here. There are some fish there kind of busting up and around. I'm gonna toss a jig in there, and then there's some fish that are busting up on top of this point too. I'm gonna get my, actually fire up there real quick because I see him going crazy on the shad up there. And then I'm gonna throw the jig. Oh golly. Come on, fish. Shad are going crazy up there. Huh. It's interesting. Anyways, gonna throw the jig down here for a second. And then we'll try to work our way to that little waypoint where we saw that couple of good fish chilling. This is the brush pile we graphed. We're gonna run both, and then look at all that shad up there though, man. Look at all that shad, 100 feet out, it's just a wall of shad. Good luck competing with that, my bait. Too much shad almost. Or not almost, definitely too much shad. Okay, toss my jig up there. There's one decent fish there. Get a little bit close to this brush pile though, I think. Anyways, let's try to hit this, let's organize. Let's try to hit this one little sweet spot here, and then go graph something else. And if that doesn't work, then my plan is to head back to where we caught that 1 2-pounder, or I had that 1 2-pounder come off. See if we can get anything there going again. Because that's the only spot I saw with a decent school of fish on it, or a fish with decent size. At least the only spot where I caught it had a bite from a fish of decent size. So we'll try that after we hit these next couple spots. We can always roll back over there. The lesson we're learning from this video is that there's a lot of bass, and there's a lot of small bass and beaver, which you already knew. And differentiating the small fish from the big fish a lot of times can be the challenge. Now, like on a lake like Grand Lake that I'm going to Thursday, it's kind of the opposite. The opposite challenge is on Grand, it's finding the fish. Not, oh, come on. He hit it. Dang it, that felt like a decent one too. Oh, maybe not. Look at that. Took my tail off my bait. Spot lock. Maybe it's just a little spotted bass. But on a lake like a Grand Lake, the challenge is more in finding the fish in general, not so much only just finding quality. This is the bait I'm throwing, by the way. Missile Baits, Spunk Shad, frosted purple color, 5.5 inch on a 4/0 3/8 ounce core tackle ultimate swim bait hook, also known as TUSH. It's been my go-to bait in this dirtier water scenario all year, and I have caught some good ones on it. Caught a lot of numbers on it. It's very versatile. You can throw it in the schoolers. You can fish it deep. It just kind of gives me a lot of versatility, which is what I'm looking for offshore. I don't want to have to pick up 10 different baits. That's why I really like a jig too. Between a jig and this TUSH now, that's kind of like my two main go-to baits. And it's probably accounted for 90% of those two baits, a jig and the TUSH, have accounted for like 90% of my bass in this dirtier water. When you get in the clear water, I've been catching them on the hover rig, which has been really good too. But these are kind of my two baits this year. I've caught some fish on crankbait, as always, but I don't know. It seems like this TUSH just really seems to work perfect in a variety of scenarios. Oh my gosh, there they are. I came up and just went wild right there. That was a good one too, that actually came out of the water. You can see him up there too on that little sweet spot up there, 90 feet out. I'm gonna try cranking these fish. So I can see him way out there, 90 feet out. Caught that first fish today on the crankbait. Haven't really thrown it all that much since. I haven't caught as much on a crankbait this year as I normally do. Normally I catch a lot of fish cranking, and I've thrown the crankbait a lot this year and had minimal success, which is really annoying because one of my favorite baits in the world to throw. There's really only been one good day I've had with it all year where I've caught a lot of fish on it. Coincidentally, it's on the next spot we're about to go graph, so maybe maybe we're gonna get lucky. I caught some cranking here earlier in the year too. Is that fish? There we go. Oh, little guy. Just a little spotted bass. That's why they weren't eating the tush. They're this size. Just little small fish. Don't really want those small spotted bass to bite. Or I guess they're fine when we get them to bite, but we're not trying to catch the small spotted bass. We're trying to catch the better quality largemouth. So that's what we're dealing with. A lot of the fish out here we're dealing with are that. And that's, again, one of the benefits of throwing that, like a hair jig, the tush, stuff like that, is that it limits the ability for those smaller fish to get the bait. So if there are bigger fish out there, they have a better shot of actually eating your bait. Not that it's helping much right now. Because there's just a lot of small fish around. One more cast up here. This crankbait, then we're going to roll to the next spot. Just kind of working my way down this little drop here. Crank it. So many fish back in this deal though, just busting. It's crazy how many schoolers there are back here. Okay, let's roll. Got one more spot to graph, just to see if we can find better school. This last spot was the best school I've found all year on beaver. This next spot we're going to. So if they're still there, which I would be shocked, we could catch them pretty well, but I doubt they're still there. But they might be somewhere in the general area, so we might be able to relocate them. Let's try to find them though. Okay guys, fingers crossed this is the spot, because if not, we're not doing too hot today. Okay, so this is where I found my best school of fish all year on beaver. So we're about to see if they're still here. Again, highly doubtful they are, but I also found a brush pile the last time I was here like a month ago that was like brand new, someone had just dropped in. So we might check that out too. Maybe there's a group of fish on that brush pile. But that kind of gives us a couple things to fish. Honestly, not been that productive of a day, but I also feel like this bite's just gonna get better as the day goes on. It's only 8:15 in the morning, and a lot of times as the day progresses, these fish will stop roaming and you can find them grouped up in the same areas where we just were, but around the brush piles. And we have at least a couple spots where we feel like we have some better quality fish, which is nice. This is where that deal was, where there was a pile of fish, and well, there's now nothing. So, all hopes that the fish were still here from literally a month ago. Pretty much gone. There's a big, big arch. I don't know what that is. I don't think that's a bass, to be fair. Maybe there's some bass right there on some shad. They're out here randomly. I'm just gonna kind of graph around because there was a big school of fish here. Maybe they just set up in the afternoon. Maybe they're just all roaming out here. It's just a timing deal on like when they set up really well. Because they're definitely not set up right now. But there is some nice brush and just some stuff out here. Probably could drag around and maybe pick up a fish or two, but not really what I'm looking for necessarily. There's just a bunch of random fish just scattered out here. A couple trees and stuff, but nothing great. You can see that first where I caught that, first spot where we caught fish, where I had the good largemouth come off. Those fish were set up pretty well for what we wanted to do, and they are not set up on this stuff like that at all. There are a handful of fish though up on that deal over here on the side imaging, which is kind of interesting. Let's see here. Over here, there were a few fish, like right in that area. I'm just gonna drop a mark to see where that shows up on the mapping. Oh, it's right on that deal, okay. So there are a couple fish there. They're just not stacked up like they need to be. Probably just some smaller fish. So we're not gonna worry about that too much. But I'm gonna graph this brush pile that was over here. If my graph will cooperate with me. There we go. Graph this brush pile, see if there's anything here. And if not, we're gonna make a run back to where we kind of started catching fish. But ooh, there's a couple fish right there. Any more? And just two? There's that nice drop. There's a couple of fish. But I mean, there's a couple of fish on that drop, but nothing crazy. Nothing crazy. Shallow here. Drops off fast. Yeah, I like what I'm seeing there on the side scan. There are some fish that are just kind of chilling. There's a couple fish right there too, right on that break, on the 2D. You go to the side scan real quick, you can see that there's some fish that are kind of scattered out and some bait scattered out on this break right here, which I kind of like. So we're gonna mark that as just some rock. And then we also have on the traditional sonar, there were a couple fish stacked up right there. But nothing super nice. I don't know, I'm not really seeing anything that like jumps off the screen that makes me want to stop here and fish. So we're actually gonna make our way back up to where we caught our first keeper and see if we can dial that area in a little bit more. There's a lot of fish there. Maybe we should have just stuck around there potentially and tried to maximize. But let's see if we can do that, because maybe throw a shaky head around up there, find some hard cover that some better quality fish might be setting up around. It just seems like that's the best spot we found so far, and it's the only place we got a quality bite. May have just been random luck that we got a quality bite there though compared to everything else. But that's to be determined. We don't have any evidence that it's not a spot. It looked the best on the graph too, so let's go back over there and check that out. I feel like that's probably our best bet. Never really graphed this before, but I kind of like how, I probably should show you on the chart why I like it, but it's basically these steeper points. This creek channel runs in, my graph decides to turn on. Creek channel swings in really tight right here against this kind of flatter bank. So I want to try to graph it for some brush piles because I'm sure somebody's put some brush piles out here, crappie guy or somebody. And I have a feeling there might be some better quality fish setting up in brush over here because it's just all the fish that are on these points and stuff seem kind of small, which is a little bit frustrating because it's a lot easier to catch the schools of fish, compared to trying to find the fish that are up in brush piles. So I prefer not to brush pile fish, especially in videos like this, because it's just, you're gonna catch like one fish every 20, 30 brush piles you graph, you'll find one that looks decent. And that's not super fun content-wise, but really the goal right now is to find, there's a lot of random fish out here too, what the heck? I don't know what those are. But what I'm really looking for is brush out here. Make sure we're still recording. Oh yeah, we're good. Okay, so what I'm really looking for is brush out here somewhere. And honestly, we might be getting close. It's probably another month or so, another 3 weeks, where I would actually probably be fishing shallow on beaver to try to get a quality bite compared to fishing out deep. I think we're like right in that, like it's, you know, middle of July, later July, like late, it's actually late July now. So usually once it hits August, I actually don't like fishing offshore on beaver all that much. So we might be getting to that point maybe sooner than I was thinking, where we might need to start fishing shallow on beaver. And there's a lot of shallow boat docks through here that I like skipping, throwing a buzzbait down the bank. Really fishing boat docks is my favorite thing to do to catch quality fish. So we may have to do an uncut of me just fishing boat docks one of these days. That could be very entertaining to see me slam a jig into 55 floats, boat floats, but that is kind of my favorite way to catch them this time of year, is on a jig, because these fish get really weird this time of year unless you're brush pile fishing. They get kind of funky, but there's some fish there. What are those? Those don't look like bass, or if they are bass, they're very small bass. Probably just a school of these spotted bass that are just randomly chilling out here. I didn't see any brush, so if anyone wants to come plant a brush pile, this is a great spot to do it, right here, about where my boat is. If anyone wanted to go drop a nice brush pile for me. I graph a lot of places, I'm like, man, I wish someone would have put a brush pile there, and they just haven't, so a lot of missed opportunities out here on Beaver Lake. If you like dropping your own brush, there's a lot of good spots that are not brushed up right now. There's so many fish busting all around in this area. We're back kind of where those schoolers were. They're schooling everywhere. I could just chase schoolers all day if I wanted to. They're all underneath the boat right now. Like, they're going crazy. Maybe that's a way you can catch a good bag if you just stayed on the schoolers all day. Maybe if you got weeded through 20, 30, 40 bites, you might be able to actually catch a decent one. But let's run back up to where we, just right around the corner where I lost that one good largemouth. Okay, we're here. Let's switch cameras and get fishing. Okay, there we go. So probably just gonna fish this spot and Probably the last thing I'll be able to do before the cameras get too hot. I might actually go fish some boat docks just for fun. But we're gonna look around here, see if we can see anything on the Livescope, and also pull up on this point and just bomb across it. Fish right there. Not interested. Okay, let's see if we can see some of these fish that were up here. I'm gonna cast a couple of these fish I just see on Livescope real quick before I just start bombing casts across this deal. Oh, fish is following it. Okay. So let's kind of see what we got going on up here. I don't know if the fish are still going to be around here. I didn't graph this again before I fished it. I just pulled up and started fishing. So not always the best strategy, but it's the one I chose to employ. I'm just going to bomb casts up on top of this point. It's real shallow up there, but oh, that busting there. Nice. Small fish though. There's definitely fish there up there, real shallow. It's interesting. Real shallow. You can kind of see them on the Livescope a little bit every once in a while, but there's that one that was over here. So yeah, I'm just firing this thing as far as I possibly can away from the boat, trying to cover across this point. Trying to stay away from them. These fish look like they've even like kind of calmed down since this morning. Like they're not up there like they were, which is actually not a bad thing, because it may mean they've tightened up in a group and they might be a little bit easier to catch. Or they've pulled to that brush that's over here, so that's not a bad, always a bad thing. But we could also be in that mid-morning lull, which is always a bad time of the day to fish, because they're kind of done feeding up from the morning and then they haven't set up in the brush yet, or like in their afternoon spots. So a lot of times this is a tough time of day to catch fish. It's like the 8:30 to 11:30 time of day is usually kind of tricky. Looking around to see if I see any. I see a few way out there. Way out there. If those are the bass, you might be able to catch one of these. Oh, he hit it. One had it in his mouth. You can see him, there's a lot of them down there on the bottom, which is really weird. chilling down there on the bottom. There's a bunch of them out there and 100 foot out. On the Livescope, you can see them down there. 100, 110 foot. Bunch of them. Interesting. Interesting. See where some of these brush piles are. Brush piles should be straight ahead. Try to throw a football jig in a couple of these brush piles. There's one of them. Jig's going down to it. It's right down in the heart of that thing. Looks like there are some fish that are setting up around that brush. Got a little bit too close to this one. Kinda sucks. Snuck up on me. I didn't realize that was a brush pile. But there's a fish right there. You can see that that's a good one on that brush. Right there. Bait just passed him. 40 foot. It looks like a gar. Swimming down to the brush pile. It's either a gar or like a 5-pounder. That's a nice brush pile. Jig's going right down to it. This has got to be where these fish set up later in the day, or all these piles. They pull up on this flat kind of clay pea gravel point in the morning to feed, and then they pull out to this brush in the afternoon. I just don't know if they've settled in yet enough in this stuff. You're not seeing as many fish roaming around, and I'm seeing more fish around this brush than I did this morning. More casts on this brush pile. There's one more to hit. And then I don't know what to do after that. I think we're just gonna see what happens from there. I have a feeling I can catch one on one of these brush piles, but it may just be one of those things where I need to wait until the afternoon. Like 11 o'clock might be the time. But there's definitely some fish around this area, so I bet these brush piles are gonna, at some point in the day, you're gonna be able to pull up to these brush piles and catch quality fish. So I have a pretty good feeling about that. It's a timing game. That's the thing, is like you can rotate these spots, and like for example, we pulled up here this morning and right behind us we were catching them. And then you pull up now, it's 8:30. Oh golly, what was that? A fish? Couldn't have been a fish. It's just been a branch. I was turned talking to you. No, that wasn't a fish. But throw in this brush pole one more time. But basically, what I was saying is that you could have pulled up on the spot at, let's say, 8:45 and been like, spot's not that great. You don't really see any fish busting. There's nothing really happening. The fish are not active up on the point like they were this morning. But you could pull up here at 11 and be like, man, this is one of the best brush piles in the lake. And you catch three pounders out of this brush pile at 11 o'clock. And when you get here at 7 o'clock in the morning, all those fish were up on top of that point. So it's one of those deals where this timing on all this stuff is so difficult offshore, and you're not gonna know exactly what the right timing is until you fish the spot at all times of day. And I would fish this spot probably 3 or 4 times throughout the day, and some of the other spots that we've hit today. Like, I wouldn't rule anything out on a lot of these spots, because if there's fish around, as many as there are, that means there's a lot of bait, there's a lot of potential that there's going to be a better quality fish somewhere in the area. Oh gosh. Get out of there. This is my 4th cast in this brush pile. Good largemouth, as I was saying. Oh golly, these fish do not want to stay on, but this one got in the boat. It's the same size as the one I caught earlier, guys. There we go. It's actually a little bit smaller. The other fish was a little bit bigger than this guy. Finally got one out of that brush pile. I felt like I could get bit out of that brush. I just kept throwing and throwing and throwing. Got that one on the Fish to Moment offshore jig out of the brush pile. Solid 2-pounder right there. Beautiful Beaver Lake largemouth, same spot. They were up on the point chasing. They moved out here to the deeper brush, and I bet this brush pile is gonna get even better as the day goes on. So that is pretty cool stuff, showing you the timing and all that stuff. Beautiful fish. Let's get back down there. But that, guys, that's the deal right there, is figuring out what the fish want in the moment, fish the moment. You can't really get tied down to, okay, I caught them up on that point earlier, they're gonna be there again. It's all a timing deal, it's all situational, and that's why it's so tricky to catch fish at times, because you have to pay attention to all these factors. Just got that fish on a, this is a Fish to Moment offshore jig, sorry, I can't think. Peanut butter and jelly with a kamikaze crawl in the back. Let me pause this recording real quick, and then we're gonna cast. There's one more brush pile over here actually, so we might be able to catch another one. Well guys, that's it for this Fish to Moment long form video. We got 2 2-pound plus bites, which is actually pretty good out here on Beaver right now. Again, it takes about 11 pounds to get a top 10 in a tournament right now, 13 pounds to win. So if we could kind of continue the momentum from this morning and put a couple more decent fish in the boats, 3 more 2+ pounders, we'd be in business. We got this brush pile deal kind of working. Lost the fish on the tush this morning, but that just kind of happens. And I think that we are doing the right thing, at least, to put quality fish in the boat. Again, caught the first few fish on a core tackle 3/8 ounce 4/0 tush hook with the Hog Farmer. This is actually the Missile Bait Spunk Shad in the frosted purple color. Throwing that on a Denali Covert Light 7'6" swim jig rod. This is a moderate fast action rod. It has a little bit of tip to it, which helps those fish get the bait a little bit better. And it's usually helping me get the fish in the boat. I think I was being maybe a little bit trigger happy. You have to let these fish eat this tush, which I know sounds great, but you need to let them eat a little bit longer than you would normally to let them get that bait in their mouth, especially when they're not the biggest fish. And I'm just pairing that with some 14-pound Sunline SC Sniper fluorocarbon. And then I actually broke off my jig, but I caught my other fish on a Fish to Moment offshore jig, and just using 18-pound Sunline SC Sniper fluorocarbon, 7-foot heavy power Denali Lithium Pro rod. So that's the deal. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way to the end, make sure to leave a comment letting me know you made it this far. Also, again, want to give a huge shout out to the sponsors of the Fish to Moment Uncut content, Bridgeford Foods and Integrated Boat Works. Thanks for the support. We'll see you guys in the next video.